In this video, I'll be giving you updates on the construction of the Boring Company facility and right across the road, the Starlink facility. This is off Walker Watson Road in Bastrop County, Texas. I also invited special guest Joe Tegmeyer, who you've seen in many of my past videos. We're using his drone to explain some of the progress that we're seeing. I'm here back at the location for the Boring Company as well as the Starlink facility because you guys wanted a much better video than what I was able to provide on my cell phone. So we brought in the drone expert, Joe Tegmeyer. Not only are we going to show some drone shots of the progress of the facilities, but also I feel like you know what's going on a lot more intimately than I do here. So
well, I hope so.
Yeah. I mean, for example, the machine at the very end there with like the conveyor belts. I didn't know what that was for. So he has some great answers for us. This is not an entryway, but this is, kind of, it looks like the main entrance in a way because of the tunnel segment. And they have another one of these on display actually in Vegas at the Resorts World. They have, that tunnel segment on display, but yeah, let's talk about this side of the factory. Do we know if they're comparable in size?
As far as like the floor space, and we're talking about the Starlink facility and the Boring Company facility, I'd say that the Starlink building is as big as the Boring Company entire facility, the fenced-in section with all of the different buildings. So it's quite a dramatic difference in the sizes.
Right, 500,000 square feet.
521,000 square feet over there.
That's right.
And we'll show a little later, but through the entrance you can see that there's actually a few different levels inside the Starlink facility. But the Boring Company is more or less made up of some kind of like warehouses and some what they call Quonset huts, which are rounded top fabric lined structures that actually have their history back into the World War II era. But they're easy to set up and they give a lot of space, and they can be portable to some degree, but they have those here. And in fact, the rounded top tent, the Quonset hut that you see in the videos with the drone that we'll be talking through later, that was the first structure here in this facility.
Wow.
And that was sometime around, I think it was 2020 when that was put up.
So you've been probably following this in person much longer than I have, since this is kind of a news update video. What can we tell them about what's new here? We talked about the Hyperloop Plaza.
Right.
We have that machine that we'll show them there with the kind of the conveyor belts.
Right.
But the sign,
Yep.
The sign is new. The Boring Company, at least it's labeled now. What else?
Right. Well, the sign that's on that large warehouse, the warehouse itself was constructed sometime last summer through the fall. And so it's also pretty new as well. Some other interesting developments just as far as the infrastructure, and then we'll come back to some of the details. But on the far side of the facility from where we're standing here near the fence line, there's a lot of housing complexes that have been put in. They've improved the ground, they put slabs down. They're kind of like, manufactured homes. But they're here for the families of the workers and the workers themselves, because many of the Boring Company people travel quite a bit. And there's not a lot of infrastructure out here in the Bastrop location. So the Boring Company provides many of the workers some housing. And they've actually been adding on those housing this year. So it's almost doubled the amount of housing complex that are available for the workers. Some of the other interesting things, and I think it's just for the quality of life, is they have a gymnasium, they have an outdoor swimming pool. They also have like a tennis court nearby that swimming pool. Yeah, right here.
What?
And it's on where that sign for Snailbrook Plaza is located.
See, this is the perk of having a drone, because I can only see so much from the street.
Yeah.
And we also know that at some point they're going to break ground on Project Amazing, which is a 110 unit housing development with Elon Musk and I think Leonard Homes. And it's supposed to be not too far from this area, maybe less than 2 miles.
Yeah, it could be. I've actually, with the drone, flown around this area quite a bit to see if I could detect where that might be. There is a housing development just north of us along this road between the two facilities. but it's not really related at all. It's a completely different company, and it actually, the last time I looked there, it looked like that work had kind of stagnated. So
Yeah.
other than that, there's no other development within a few miles of here other than the Starlink facility and what we see here with the Boring Company.
Right. So you searched by the sky, I searched, I drove around, and so I think it's just probably delayed, because I know that they were talking about it in either city council or county commission meetings, probably county commission, right? In October of last year. So stagnated.
Yeah, it's, you know, those types of things can take a while, so
Yeah.
it could be just a red tape type thing, or it could be something else. I don't know.
Yeah. What is the update with Project Amazing? Unfortunately, they don't really have a press department, so we have
Exactly.
to speculate and guess.
Right. Well, if you watch my coverage of Giga Texas, the one thing that is absolutely certain is things will change constantly, and you never know exactly what's going to happen.
Which is why you just have to show up and be consistent, and then like someone like you, you're going to notice the changes. So we appreciate your consistency, because I don't know if many people know it, they probably do, but that, you know, you don't even live in Austin, so you're like really dedicated to the cause.
Well, it's not too far. It's about an hour and a half driving, but it's very interesting. And to have not just Giga Texas, which in and of itself is pretty interesting, but we also have SpaceX, we have the Boring Company, and there is a Neuralink campus somewhere near here. And perhaps after we're done shooting around here, we might just stop by there and take a look.
Let's do it.
But just to have all of these various parts of the greater, I guess, Elon Musk companies in one basic area is pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, should we just show them video of the conveyor belt machine and we can talk about it here, or should we walk down there?
We could probably just, you know, use some of the drone footage of that.
So let's talk about that, because last time I was here, you know, I saw that. I hadn't seen that in the past, and I couldn't figure out what it was, or Google couldn't tell me what it was. So you seem to have an idea.
Okay, well, I forget exactly which one, but several videos ago I actually showed it in action. And what it is it's kind of a conveyor belt to remove the dirt that comes out of the tunnel as the boring process is underway. And so on the front of the proof rock machine, you have the actual drilling head. And then as it removes the dirt, it's pulled through the machine, and then it has to exit somewhere. So it exits over to this large conveyor system, and then it redirects it into various piles so that that dirt can be removed.
Okay.
So it's sort of part of a very large system that supports the proof rock. And you know, the proof rock is the thing that does the drilling. Everybody thinks that's what is the boring tunnel system, but there's a lot of supporting infrastructure, and that is one of them.
And you were telling me that at this point, you know, it is still very slow, but it has to be slow so it doesn't collapse on top of its.
Oh, as far as the drilling process?
Yeah.
Yeah, because as they drill the bore and the boring machine continues to move through the new bore, at some point the bore needs to be reinforced or supported. And that's exactly what this is here behind us, this sign with the Boring Company. These are concrete segments. And as they bore a certain distance, then they bring these concrete segments in, and then they line the tunnel. And then when that segment is done, then they can continue to bore to the next one. And they kind of like work their way through the entire bore to make the tunnel. So these things that we see here, these concrete sections, are vital for that process. And they happen to be making them right behind this fence. And with the drone image, you'll be able to see there's, I don't know, hundreds of those concrete segments, and there's also the molds that makes the concrete segments. They're kind of these blue items that you'll see up near to the larger warehouse. And they also have the batch plant, the concrete manufacturing plant right here as well. And I don't know if you can see it here, but we'll show in the video. There's these large white tanks, and then there's a large tower, and this is part of that process to make the concrete. I
saw Elon interviewed on the Full Send podcast, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but the guys had no idea what the Boring Company was. They said, is that a flamethrower company? So it's not. But I want to know, like, in your words, how would you explain the Boring Company in a short summary to someone who's not familiar, and why is it so, you know, so much of a game changer?
Probably the best way to describe it is, do you enjoy being in traffic, sitting on the road and with all the lanes full and there's nowhere you can go and you're just sitting there waiting for hours? The problem is that all of our cities, for the most part, with the exception of like bridges, is a one-dimensional design, and that puts all the roads on that flat plate, and everybody has to drive along those roads. The Boring Company is designed to try to increase the vertical construction ideas of the city, and then by boring the tunnels underneath, you can free up a lot of that traffic by giving them alternative ways of getting to where they're going, and helps with that traffic flow. Now, there was something called the Big Dig, and I think it was in Boston. You can look about that, but before they did that and they put a big tunnel system in, they had these large highway structures that not only were kind of not pleasant to look at, but it essentially divided the city up, and it made almost like walls, and it really wasn't a very nice way of going. And with that Big Dig and putting the tunnel system, they were able to eliminate quite a bit of that and move that traffic underground.
I know that a lot of Elon's companies get kind of haters and doubters, a lot of FUD, with Tesla we've seen over the years, but I have seen criticism with the Boring Company, and people just saying that it's not fast enough, or it's not actually going to relieve congestion. So have you seen a lot of that negativity?
I don't know. I think, there's going to be some people that will embrace things and say this is the greatest thing, and then there's other people that will be very skeptical about anything. And there has been attempts to use tunnels in the past that haven't worked, but there's been a lot that do work, and most people don't realize it. Over in Europe, they've been doing quite a bit of tunneling, and they need to, especially like with the Swiss Alps and a lot of the mountainous ranges. They do the tunnels, and it works out well. I think in Norway, they even built a giant tunnel for cruise ships to go through. And then we talked about the Big Dig. If you've been in subways, Washington, D.C., New York, those are all tunnels as well, and those seem to work really well. I think the main criticism or the sticking point that some people have is that they think that you have to have like a train to get thousands and thousands of people in to be economically feasible or to make it worth your time. And the idea of using cars, maybe people don't think that really works out. But I think the whole, if you call it experiment, but the installation at Las Vegas is showing that it's not true, and the throughput of people just using the Teslas is actually pretty amazing, and it's so good that the city wants to do more.
Well, even with still human drivers and only going 40 miles per hour, because I've ridden in those tunnels several times, and it saves you time walking, but imagine when it is, autonomous or with robo-taxi and at a higher speed, it'll be really impressive. I feel like it's kind of the same thing with, Starship. Once it's really going, okay, everyone's going to be on board.
Especially the people that said that it'll never be possible or commercially viable to land rockets. It's just impossible. And SpaceX just did their 200th successful landing and then reuse. So just because people can't see the vision now doesn't mean that it's not a viable option. And we just need to let that technology develop.
Hey, let's take a drone tour.
Okay, so here we're approaching the Boring Company site. You can see that large warehouse with the Boring Company sign, which is relatively new. A lot of materials down here on the sort of the infield. Some of that looks like maybe some crane parts, and others looks like some sort of rack mount system. But the thing I want to show you the most is over near where they're doing the tunnel segment construction, and with the concrete and some of the formwork that is going on there as well. So I'll bring the drone down as we get next to that sort of that Quonset hut. And here in the infield area, you can see quite a bit of the concrete segments that are all stacked up, and then some here that have all been completed. And then these blue items over near the Quonset hut is the forms that they use to mold those concrete segments. And next to it, you see this tower, and then those 3 or 4 white tanks. That's where they manufacture the concrete that is used for these tunnel segments. And I'll just sort of fly around here, give you a pretty good view of how this looks. If you're interested in the drone information, we're flying at about 99 feet above, which is about 30 meters approximately. And we're kind of looking towards the east across the main entrance. Right underneath the drone is that Boring Company ring that Ellie and I were talking at earlier, and you'll probably see that in more different parts of the video. But I'm going to maneuver the drone a little bit farther to the right on the screen because Ellie wanted to take a look at this conveyor belt item. As mentioned, this is what is used to help extract the dirt from the proof rock machine as it's doing the boring, and then it will help put the dirt into different piles, allowing it to be picked up and taken off site or used wherever they may be using them. But I think this is a really great view looking down at that item. It looks like it's about 3 or 4 stories tall, 4 main segments. You can see that truss segment that makes it up, and then in the middle of it, they have conveyor belts that kind of run vertically, and then they also have some horizontal conveyor belts as well. And normally this would not be in this section of the site. If they were boring, they would have it over at the end of the boring tunnel. And as I move the drone towards where the 2 tunnels have already been bored, you can see the concrete segments. As I continue to reposition the drone, just past the end of this boring tunnel, where you see the framework, looks like they're preparing to put some sort of concrete. You can also see some of the dirt segments. And this square area is where that conveyor belt system was when they were drilling that particular tunnel. And also, if you look closely, there's 2 tunnels. And as I mentioned before, the one on the left is one that on the exit, it's just sort of got a grate and a doorway, and I think people could use it to walk, for example, or maybe drive a car. But the one on the right, if you look closely, it's got a sliding steel door. It's painted green. It's got kind of a window in it and then sort of rings of yellow. That's what the Boring Company talked about as part of their Hyperloop test system. Anyway, it's a good discussion about what's going on this particular part of the Boring Company site. And what we see here is the kind of the small shed or warehouse with the Boring Company on the left-hand side. You can see that Quonset hut and that open door, and inside that open door you can actually see the drilling head of the proof rock system, and then on the outside you can see the white painted segment, which is sort of the other part of the proof rock system. And as it's in doing the drilling head, and actually I think you can see one on this end of the white segment, you can kind of see that drill head. But then they also have conveyors and other systems inside that help to extract that dirt. And this is just how it looks like when they're doing some sort of maintenance on that system here at the Boring Company in Bastrop, Texas. Now we're going to take a look at the Starlink facility, and we're kind of on the east looking to the west. And this is a good idea of what the front of it looks like. You can see the receiving doors off to the right-hand side of the factory. And I'm going to try to maneuver it, the drone down so you can get a good closer view of the entrance and also the 2 boring tunnels that exit onto this side of the property. Now, as I continue to bring the drone down, you can also see that they've put the asphalt for the roads. The curbs are already in place, and they're doing a lot of work for this main entrance. And also on the left-hand side of the screen, you can start seeing those boring tunnels coming into view. And this is what is used to connect the 2 facilities underneath the Farm to Market 1209 road. Now, the boring tunnel closest to us with all of those formwork for the concrete, you can see that it also has another one of those doors. And this is to seal off the tunnel for some of the testing. And according to the Boring Company site, they've used this for some Hyperloop testing. Not sure exactly what they were testing, but you can take a look at their site and get a little bit more information. But this is a pretty close-in view, and you can see how that door system works with the railing and some of the other work that they're doing around the entrance. As I fly over to the second tunnel, which is the second one that was installed, you can get a good idea of what the front looks like. It's kind of got a grate around it to prevent, I guess, animals from entering, and it's got a door as well. And you could walk all the way through this part of the Starlink site and go through the tunnel and end up over at the Boring Company. Now I'm going to pivot the drone back towards the main factory, and I want to give you a good appreciation for the main entrance and how it looks with this sort of iconic black corner with the sweeping black trim that goes around two sides of the building. And I've seen other renderings of other Starbase or SpaceX facilities, and they look very similar to this as well. So I think this is their overall architectural motif. So anyway, I hope you enjoy these views of the Starlink site.
Let's get another angle of the Starlink facility, but first the Walker Watson Road sign is down. Apparently someone looks like they shot at it and also ran it over. So we'll get a little quick pump in and show you the other side of the factory. It's not that heavy. It's a big factory. In fact, how many of these Starlink facilities would fit in Giga Texas?
It's a good question. This is about 521,000 square feet. Currently, Giga Texas is about 10 million square feet. So what is that, about 19 of them? 18 of them?
Seriously?
Yeah. And they're expanding Giga Texas on the south. They're adding another about 4 to 5 million square feet.
Wow. That really puts into perspective how big Giga Texas is. But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about this. I have visited this site probably since December of last year is when I was first clued into it. And it was very much, in its infancy stage, and now it's looking real nice. So tell me about, you've been following the development and where we're at. It's not done yet.
No, it's not done yet, although the target date for completion was the end of March, so we're almost at the end of June or middle June, so they're a little bit behind, but I wouldn't consider that really a big issue right now. But the main construction started, I don't know, probably around March, April of last year, 2022. Wow. The whole area was, the ground was prepared, it was graded, and then they started doing the footings and then the ground slabs probably around July or so. By the time we got to August, there was actually a structure that was showing up here. And then certainly by the time we got to December, most of the structure was completed, not all of it. There were still some wall panels that were not installed. The glass front entrance wasn't there, although part of that black kind of iconic band around the structure was there. And only a portion of the roof was completed as well. But since then, a lot has changed.
Right. And you don't think do you think that they're producing the Starlinks yet in there or no?
No, I don't think so. From what I could tell, they just installed the heating and ventilation system on the roof.
Okay.
With the drone video, you'll be able to see that pretty clearly. There's, I think, at least 4 main systems. The electrical system on the back part of the factory has mostly been installed. They've been installing some steel pipes that would be used most likely for heating of the system. So that's mostly installed, but not quite yet. So I don't think they have all of the electricity and the support that they need. They have put in a very large water tank and a pump system that's fairly common in this part of Texas. So I suspect that they are pumping from a well, and then they're using the tank to support the facility.
Now, I got my start on my channel covering Starlink, and I was actually living in Washington State at the time where there is, Starlink facility there in Redmond. I never got to visit it. However, why do you think that they're expanding out here?
I think it's just the demand. And I think also, to be clear, the difference between the Redmond one and what you see here is the Redmond one, I think, makes the actual satellites themselves. Whereas this facility is going to be making the dishes, the ground support equipment, the things that you buy and you would put up at your house.
Gotcha. Good distinction. Yeah, no, I think it's a beautiful building, honestly. Sorry, it's itchy out here. There's a lot going on.
We're in Central South Texas.
Yeah, I know.
In the summer.
Yeah, and it's what, like 9 a.m. and it's hot.
It is.
It's already hot.
It is.
But yeah, and so here we also see the tunnels.
Right.
So let's maybe talk about that. I'll show them the diagram as well.
Okay, well, these are the 2 exit tunnels. The entrance begins underneath the road over at the Boring Company, and through the drone shots and the other discussion, you'll probably see that. But this is where these 2 exit. It's a great way of connecting to the 2 facilities without having to go across a very busy road, as Ellie has talked about.
And you can hear it?
Exactly. But these 2 tunnels, it seems like they're being used for slightly different purposes. The one closest to us Looks like it's mostly a regular tunnel. It's got sort of a grate with a door on the front, and people can walk through there with no problem. The other one, and I don't know, maybe with the drone shots and some of the close-ups, you can see they have a formwork. They're putting some concrete around the entrance or the exit of the tunnel. They also have a sliding door, and this is the part of the test systems that Boring Company talked about, the Hyperloop test.
Yeah.
And on either side of the tunnel, they have these doors that close them off. So one would presume that they're doing some sort of testing.
Interesting. Do you think that Elon would let me crawl through the tunnel?
Sure, why not? You know, that might be a great way of getting an interview with him, or at least get his attention.
I would totally do it. Oh my gosh. I feel like it'd be kind of freaky being, even going in the Vegas tunnels. It's like, they look really small.
Right.
I mean, they're lit up. They look cool, but they look kind of like, whoa, are we going to fit in there? So it would be interesting to crawl through it.
That's actually a good observation. One of the differences between the Boring Company tunnels and some of the other tunnels that we've talked about or you may have heard about is the size. These are relatively small, and I think the idea is to be able to have multiple ones to address some of that traffic issue. But also, if you follow SpaceX and you think about the Mars expeditions and what we may do there, there is some speculation that the size of the proof rock is just enough to fit inside the Starship, because I think the diameter of it is just slightly smaller than 9 meters.
Wow.
So I don't know if that's true, but you could imagine if they disassembled the proof rock and sent it on several different starships, you could get them theoretically to Mars, and then maybe they could use that for tunneling. You never know.
This Hyperloop Plaza, so if someone drives by this, do we even know what this is for?
Well, it was put up about a month and a half ago, so it's relatively new. And I think it's just a way to mark this particular road going into this part of the Boring Company site. And also on this side of the road, it's hard to tell, there's a road between us and the Starlink facility, but on this side of the road is all Boring Company. And in the middle of the Boring Company property itself, and we'll give you some good images of that, there's another road very similar to this. It's called Snailbrook, and I got some really good shots of that. So I think that's just the way that they are labeling the streets here on the Boring Company side of the campus.
I mean, honestly, this side of the road is so much more boring
yeah,
than the other side. I had to put it in there. And we do see some, kind of dirt over there from past competitions. So you guys might not be familiar, but last year they had a Not a Boring competition, and right now they're taking submissions for the next competition, which should be sometime in February or March of next year. So I was not aware of this. It's an 8-day competition here in Bastrop County. Tell us more about the purpose of the competition.
All right, well, first of all, it's called a Not a Boring competition, and it was set up by the Boring Company and Elon Musk to help foster technological breakthroughs, innovation, and to try to improve the process of making the tunnels. A lot of the tunnel making machines, they come in various sizes, but the basic way that they operate hasn't changed in a very long time. So in addition to having the Boring Company to help with traffic and some of the other objectives that the Boring Company's talked about, they also want to try to innovate and to try to speed up the process of making the tunnels. Many of you may have heard of Gary the Snail. It's sort of the metric that the Boring Company uses for the speed of drilling the tunnels. And right now, Gary the Snail is faster than the Boring Company can make the tunnels. So this competition that they're having is to try to bring that innovation and technology to eventually beat and then just run ahead of Gary the Snail. And it's really important, not only because of just the time involved, but it's a big cost savings too, because if you could do a project and do it in, say 2 or 3 weeks versus 2 or 3 months, that's going to save a lot of money, both for the Boring Company, but also for the customer.
And now when you say beat Gary the Snail, are we just talking about like a snail's pace, or is there like a specific mascot? Or
no, it's just really the snail's pace.
Okay.
And I forget exactly what it is. It's like, I don't know.
It's slow.
Like
it's
10 millimeters a minute or something like that. It's just very, very small.
Well, and tell me about the parameters for the competition last year. Even though the team that won, they didn't quite meet the standard, right?
Okay. Well, the Not a Boring competition actually began in, I think it was 2020 or 2021 in Las Vegas. They didn't do one in 2022. And then in 2023, out here in the end of March, early April, they had the next competition. And they do have some rules. And I think Ellie will be able to put the link here for the rules if you would like to take a look at them. But some of the basic rules are they want to try to, in the competition, drill a tunnel 30 meters in length in the specified time.
Right.
In addition to that, the bore or the diameter of the tunnel is about 0.5 meters. So we're talking small. We're not talking the huge proof rock giant tunneling machines. We're talking proof of concept. So these are relatively small, but those and several other criteria are what is used for this competition.
Right.
And in addition to that, it's a worldwide competition for 2023. They went through a screening process of all the applicants, and they eventually chose 5 finalists. And those finalists were brought out here to Bastrop for the competition. And it actually happened right behind where Ellie and I are standing. And they had a multi-day event, a lot of activities. You might be able to see some of the photos that I've sent to Ellie. You can kind of get an idea of they had a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work. It's very hot and humid out here. But of those 5 competing teams, 3 of them ended up taking awards back home.
Right. And I will be sure to cover the next competition. I wonder why they didn't have one in 2022. Do we know?
I'm not sure. It may have been because of COVID.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure
Right.
because, for the 2022, they would have started it in 2021 and that may have impacted it.
That makes sense.
But I forgot to mention, you asked me what it was about the winner. The winner was able in the time allotted to do 11.8 meters of drilling.
Wow.
So you can see it's very short of that 30 meters. But they did demonstrate a lot of interesting new technologies. And then there was 2 other winners, or different categories. One was the Innovation Award, and that was won by Swiss Loop, a Switzerland team. The number 1 team was the TUM, which is, I think, the Technology University of Munich from Germany.
Yeah, that's right.
And then the 3rd place was the University of Colorado at Boulder, and they won the navigation and accuracy portion of the competition.
Right, and isn't this kind of building upon the Hyperloop competitions that we saw many years ago in California?
You mean Hyperloop Plaza?
Well, is this slightly different, or is it the same idea? It seems like these have different, objectives.
Yeah, I think the tunneling technology can serve both. There will be different criteria of that, but interestingly enough, and now that you mentioned that, there are 2 tunnels that connect the Boring Company and the SpaceX side of these 2 facilities. One of them actually has doors on them, and it's listed as Hyperloop Test. And the Boring Company actually provided some images maybe about a year or so ago of that exact tunnel with that door. It's kind of a green sliding door and has a little opening on it, and they talked about the Hyperloop testing. So, and then the other tunnel is not that way. So it looks like they are doing testing and demonstration on both technologies here.
And we were talking about, out of all of Elon's many companies, the Boring Company kind of stagnated for a while. Do you think that, I feel like we haven't heard a lot of news about it. The Vegas Loop in Las Vegas is, it's all right. There's still human drivers, and it doesn't go as fast as I think most people were hoping for by this point. But do you think that we're going to start seeing more activity?
Well, I think so. I think City of Las Vegas has just voted on a great expansion of the Boring Company tunnel system within that city. And I've heard of several other proposed projects, some of them nearby here in the Austin location, a little bit farther south of here, down in San Antonio. There have been some in Florida, but I haven't heard much more on that.
You know where we need one, actually, because we would know this very well, is from Starbase to South Padre Island.
Yes, that would be really nice.
That you just see it right there, but you have to take, 40 minutes?
Exactly.
At least of a commute.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, right now they use hovercrafts instead of the Boring Tunnel, but that would be cool.
Well, that is true. That is true. We didn't get to see that in action, but that would have been cool.
It is true. And by the way, they're hiring a new hovercraft pilot, so if you're interested,
really?
You can work down at Starbase and going across the channel.
Wow, and take some probably VIP guests.
Probably.
What's in there? Is this just like a
Well, that's a very good question. This building started to be constructed earlier this year, and this is the first Boring Company structure outside of the fence of the main property, so it represents an expansion. And they've finally got the glass on it, all of the walls, the roof, and so forth. It obviously does have electricity, but right now I'm not sure what it's going to be used for. It did play a role in the Not a Boring competition, as you can see by some of the images, but otherwise I'm not exactly sure. But clearly they want to expand the site beyond what they have right now.
Well, maybe they'll have an event here and we'll be invited to cover it.
I hope so. The 2024 event is coming up, the Not a Boring competition, right here. And it's going to be sometime between February and March of 2024. So hopefully we'll get a chance to see that.
I think so. Well, if you guys like this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Ellie in Space if you haven't already, so you don't miss future videos. Of course, thank you to our guest star, Joe Tegmeyer. And you can find his channel at Joe Tegmeyer and make sure to subscribe to him as well.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for watching.
I do want to thank my Patreon supporters, because if you're not a full-time YouTube creator, which most of you probably aren't, you might not know that the YouTube revenue is very hit or miss. And so to those of you who have signed up for my Patreon to support me and give me consistent monthly support, that really helps make the channel possible, as I quit my full-time job in TV news a little over a year ago and decided to go all in on the channel. So I know that I appreciate my Patreon members truly, also my Twitter subscribers. And Joe, you also have some support.
Yes, I do. My Patreon supporters have been outstanding, coming up on 3 years now, which is hard to believe. And I really can't do what I'm doing without their support. And as Ellie mentioned, YouTube monetization is okay, but it can be very hit and miss. And also with Twitter, I do have a subscriber account now, and it's starting to grow, so I do appreciate all of those supporters as well.
And the Twitter subscriptions are a fairly new thing, so I think for both of us, you know, we're still figuring it out, feeling it out.
It's a bit of an experiment.
Yeah, but I'm also happy to have that as a revenue source and an incentive for creators. So it's interesting.
It is awesome. So thank you.
Awesome. It's funny too. Here we are on another holiday.
Exactly.
Because we tried to get drone footage of the Tesla lithium refinery area before the groundbreaking on Easter. It's actually Father's Day today, so happy Father's Day to my father. Don't worry, I'm going to give him a call after this video. He's on Pacific time zone, so I waited a little bit, but it's interesting that we keep finding ourselves here on less busy days. Maybe that's by design.
I agree, although I would say that those people down at the Corpus Lithium Factory, take a look at here. And with the Starlink, we have Boring. I'm up at the Gigafactory. Come on, guys, let us in.
It's funny, it's kind of funny, because when I went there for the groundbreaking, security said, yeah, there was this guy that tried to get in here like a month ago, and he said he had permission to shoot at Tesla, and you know, he was just full of it. I'm like,
I will say that is, the way they interpret it wasn't completely accurate. I said that I wanted to ask them if we had permission to do anything before we did it. So I wanted to be right up front with that. And then I just told them that I do fly up at Giga Texas, but at no time did I say I have permission to fly here. That was absolutely not it at all.
They said they looked at your channel and nothing about it seemed official.
Well, thank you.
I don't know why. But you actually got Elon's permission personally, right?
Yes, back around the end of July, August 2020, and there was a group of us called the Quad Squad. It was Randy, Jack, Jeff, and myself. And then later on, a few others, Brad Sloan and Brian Rosetsky came out as well. But our original group, the Quad Squad, was able to get the permission. We worked with security, and we came up with some of the guidelines of what we could do and what we couldn't do out at Giga Texas, and we've kind of held to that for almost 3 years now. So it's been quite an interesting adventure.
Wow.
We're on this side of the factory. This is the side that has all of the receiving doors, or at least most of them. There are a few on the south end of it, or I guess the west end of it. But this is where most of the trucks will be delivering items, or also taking the Starlinks. Also, we see that large water tank and the pumping station that serves this side as well. And then nearby here is the material staging yard. This is where they've had all the materials and the equipment for the construction. And as I mentioned before, one of the interesting things is there's a lot more brand new steel parts, beams, columns, and so forth, that is much more than just small pieces to fit out some interior rooms. This is pretty big, so I'm going to be monitoring this to see what exactly happens out here.
How often do you come out here?
I try to fly once a month, about mid-month, mostly because I'm flying at Giga Texas all the time, and that just takes a lot of my time driving up, driving back, and this adds another couple hours of that day. So, and also coming out on a Sunday is very good because, as Ellie's mentioned, it's a lot less busy, especially the road that is right behind the cameras. It can be very busy, very noisy, and you just have to watch out. So Sundays are much better.
I mean, we just found out that the Walker-Watson Road sign was either shot down or run over. It has
both.
It's just something happened, and I've taken B-roll of that sign when it's upright. So yeah, maybe we should get off the road.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, awesome. I'd like to thank Elon Musk for not sponsoring this video. I'm just kidding. Sorry, it's like I'm trying not to have a Maryland.
You're in the wind.
I'm trying not to. Hey, but hey, the hat is good. The hat has really fixed a lot, especially the bangs. Like I don't have to worry about that. And this is a size 7 hat. If you were curious, the way that we know it fits is we flick it, and if it stays, it fits. I do have a little bit of a red mark on my head after wearing it for several hours, but that's okay. This is what it really looks like behind the scenes. Yeah. This road is extremely busy.
And it's still attached sort of to the ground. It's been run over.
Uh-oh. Well, apparently someone ran over the sign. And it looks like there's bullet holes in it, or holes?
Probably.
And I'm just gonna kind of riff.
Okay.
I'm gonna keep it casual. We don't want it too polished, because then it seems like we tried too hard.
Okay.